My chair keeps squeaking against the desk and making a farting noise, so let's stop that before it becomes a regular thing. I also realized you could see my Raycons, not sponsored, charging in the background. Let's stick that under there for me to forget about, and they'll probably fall, but leave that there. What's up, everyone? Alex here. I guess we are talking about uh, potentially being otherkin and what that means for me in terms of experiences and other such topics, questioning mostly. But yeah, that does tend to be a very strange thing identity wise to explore, because being otherkin is such a misunderstood identity label, and I feel like over the last couple decades the term has kind of become a little skewed, a little misunderstood. There's a lot of misconception, there's a lot of assumption. So this is probably the strangest facet of my identity that I could be talking about on this channel. And whenever I start to get really into, like, hey, this is a weird part of me that I want to talk about and just put out there, I always feel the need to kind of just have like an addition of, I'm probably not going to touch this topic again, which is something I did when I was talking about having a dissociative disorder, because I thought that, you know, I was so afraid of backlash and afraid of just, I guess, the community's reaction to such a thing. So I put it out there, and then I said, I'm not going to touch this topic again. But here we are. I have potentially three or four videos of, me talking about having a dissociative disorder and how it affects different parts of my identity. And like, I didn't think that's how we would, like, where we'd be right now. I thought that I would just kind of put it out there and be done with it. And that's what I want to say for this video as well, this topic, that I'm never going to talk about being otherkin ever again. But I don't know, because 2020 has been full of surprises, and besides, the obvious stuff that's been going on this year, it's just been, for me, 2020 has been such a brave year for me. Like, experimenting with gender presentation and new pronouns and identity labels and identity in general. And it's just like, I don't know where this year will end up. Well, so talking about otherkinity, or being otherkin, I think this has been one of the longest standing parts of my identity that I have been aware of, I guess that would be the term. For the longest time I've known I'm trans. For the longest time I've known that, like, I don't have, like, a heteronormative sexuality, and I don't have a very cisnormative or binary normative gender, I guess is what you would call it. I'm not sure how. Yeah, I don't know how you would call it, but yeah, I've known for the longest time all of those things about me, but I've never mentioned, like, questioning being otherkin. And after realizing that I have a dissociative disorder, there's a very large overlap of the two identities, of the two experiences. And it could be, because I have headmates that I have a dissociative disorder, that I would be otherkin, but it's hard to tell where the line is. There's a lot of blurring. And please, like, if you haven't already go look at my video about me having a dissociative disorder and explaining what that means for me, because otherwise this video might be very confusing with some of the things that I would be explaining here. Okay, so I don't know if I have to explain, but I mean, being otherkin, it's it's a basic concept. It means identifying as something non-human. It's not choosing to be non-human or identify as non-human. It's not a role-playing thing, and it's not heavily relating to an identity or to a species or to something of that sort. It is purely the belief that you are some kind of non-human. Some people think it's psychological, some people think it's spiritual, and there's plenty of other I guess there's plenty of other causes of otherkinity, but that's the basic concept, and it manifests in various ways for people, and I think that there is a pretty large overlap between the otherkin community and the neurodivergent community. So, not being neurotypical, having a mental illness or mental condition, there's usually some overlap between those two communities. It's a non-normative identity, so you're going to have a lot of overlap between other non-normative identities. There's a lot of queer otherkin, there's a lot of gender non-conforming otherkin, there's a lot of, like I said, dissociative otherkin, and there's a lot to it, I guess, and it's oftentimes hard to figure out, like, am I really this thing or not? Like I said, there's a lot of blurring between those lines. It has been 9.5 minutes, and I have not gotten into the actual topic. I feel like I am holding off on it, I guess, just because while I do have an outline in front of me, I'm having trouble, like, easing into the topic, I guess. Typically, experiences with the other kind, which is where otherkin, the word, comes from, involves usually, like, astral experiences with your kin type, which is what you are kin with. Usually it involves, like, astral or phantom, which is, like, the word that they don't want you to use, because phantom limbs is usually amputees use that language. So people don't say phantom, but that's where that word or descriptor is coming from. So astral limbs, whether that means wings, tails, other aspects, physical aspects, or proposed physical aspects of your kin type. Like, maybe it feels like you have fins, maybe it feels like you have a tail or claws or something, and that is so very hard to explain, but, like, that is a thing that I do experience. I think a lot of it ties in with being autistic. I think a lot of it ties in with spiritual beliefs, because being autistic usually involves a lot of sensory overload and sensory experience that, like, non-autistic people do not understand or experience themselves. And I guess that also makes it really hard to explain, like, what do you mean, like, astral limbs? It just basically means, like, a ghostly feeling of having the body type or body parts of your kin type. I've always thought that maybe that I am dragonkin, which is just a dragon otherkin. It means someone who identifies as a dragon or believes that they might have been a dragon in another life. For some people, it's more psychological than spiritual. I think for me, it's a little bit of both, but way more leaning into spiritual. Typically, there's, like, behaviors involved with your kin type, whether it's just the way you hold yourself, like posture wise, or vocalizations, growling or purring or whatever, ways that you eat, ways that you interact. Like, I have had that kind of experience in the past. That's also another common thing that autistic people will present, is like, it's not strange, but just like non-normative behaviors that are usually not human-like, I guess. There, like I said, there's a huge overlap in those two things, and I've had experience with that sort of thing in the past, especially as a kid. I mean, kids will be weird. Like, that's just how it is. But I feel like for me, it was an intrinsic part of my identity and the way that I interacted with the world and with other people. And there's definitely a feeling of like alienation, like I'm not behaving in the way that other people do, or I'm not like acting the way that like humans do. And I guess like that, and I guess that is like another experience I have had with being otherkin. I guess taking on like a dragon-like persona or dragon-like form is actually how I experience residing in headspace, which is where I said headmates reside. When you have a dissociative disorder, usually you also have a headspace, and that's where your headmates are located. And you can travel in and out of headspace. And for me, I have a non-human form that I take when I'm in headspace, the rare times that I can access that part of my mind. So that's also very telling of like possibly being dragonkin, is that like I take on a dragon-like form in headspace, which nobody has ever known about. It's terrifying to think about putting that kind of thing out on the internet. But yeah, that's I guess those are kind of the main things. I take on the form of, I guess, like either a furred or a feathered dragon, like a pretty standard form with like 2 wings, 4 legs, a tail, ears, stuff like that. I guess not a very large dragon. It's hard to explain. I don't think that I really have a good visual on what like my dragon self looks like in headspace. Mostly because I have such a limited access to headspace. Just that just kind of happens. That's normal for people with a dissociative disorder. Not everybody has like full access to headspace. Not everyone knows like what their headspace might look like. And I do plan on doing a video about that very soon. Within the next couple months, I want to do a video on just what my headspace is like. So I guess be on the lookout for that. I'm diverging quite a bit. I'm still on the first page of my outline because I've been holding off on explaining things in a lot of detail. But speaking of headmates and headspace, I feel as though having non-human headmates is part of the reason why I might be otherkin. And while headmates are a separate identity, they're their own people, they're still very much tied to me and my identity, and I don't think that there is any separating of that. Like, I have a genderless non-human headmate, so some part of me is going to intrinsically be genderless or gender neutral or non-gendered and non-human. So Avery, my one of my headmates, who I don't know how long they've been around, or how long they have been a part of me. It's really hard to tell, that kind of thing. But I mean, they might be the reason why I'm otherkin, because Avery is definitely not human. That is not the same as otherkin. I was going to say, before I redid this, I mean, you don't know, but I re-explained this part of the video and cut out what I originally said. But I was going to originally say that you need to be human in order to be otherkin, but Avery has been questioning whether or not they might be otherkin themselves. And like, I think the better explanation is that if you are one species and questioning being like spiritually or psychologically another species, like that falls under otherkin as well. There's a lot of headmates, like people have a lot of people have headmates that are non-human, so they can still be otherkin, even if they're not human. So I know Avery has brought up questioning like that aspect of their identity. So it's really interesting to, you know, be who I am, being human and all, and being otherkin, but also having a non-human headmate who might be otherkin as well. Identity is just layered like that sometimes. It's strange, but that's a fairly new discovery for me and Avery. Like, it's so confusing and so weird, and I wish that I had a better explanation for it. Austin takes a non-human form in Headspace, but I think that's just the way that my particular system functions, and I don't think that he's literally non-human. I think that's just the form that he takes in Headspace. He takes like a draconic form, and I think that's just how my brain compartmentalizes these parts of me, these facets of myself. But yes, definitely, like, the identities and the feelings and emotions and thoughts of headmates can very well affect the person who is host to that system of headmates. So it's not really uncommon, my kind of experience. It's just very strange to talk about and to explore for myself, mostly because I'm still confused a little bit and still questioning. But there's definitely some part of me that is otherkin. Whether or not that comes from having headmates, I don't think that invalidates it. I think that I think it's still a part of my definitive experience with the otherkin identity. I mean, I keep rambling on about like struggling with this part of myself, but I wanted to go over just in general things that I struggle with, because I like to talk about the good and the not so good of any thing that I am exploring about myself. Explaining otherkin to people who are not otherkin. That is one of the harder parts of this. Like, this part of me has been like a very closely guarded secret for a while. But, you know, since starting this channel, I have been slowly getting into topics that would otherwise be very embarrassing. It's almost like a form of self-therapy, is putting these videos out and talking about things that I would never have thought of talking about with anybody before. But I feel like I don't have much to lose, to be totally honest. Finding communities online that don't see otherkin as a joke, that's another big issue. otherkin has turned into a very meme-ish thing, a very it's the butt end of a lot of jokes on the internet, and it's hard to sincerely be like, hey, I'm here, I'm otherkin, or questioning being otherkin, and like that's just that. It's hard to do that without expecting some kind of backlash or some kind of like snarky comment from somebody in certain online communities. So I mean, unless I am joining a community that is specifically for otherkin, it's not something that I really that I really openly talk about. But finding resources, that's another thing that I struggle with. Just finding out more about being otherkin. There was a very prominent otherkin community way back in the day. I think it was like in the 80s or 90s, called the Elven Kind, I think. It was something like that, and it was an online community where people talked about identifying as non-human, whether it be psychologically or spiritually or whatever. But it feels like nowadays there's not really like definitive resources, especially from like adult otherkin. There might be some people remaining who were part of that like forum of like otherkin from way back in the day. But it's just so hard to find, because I'm looking for such specific resources. Like I want to find adults that are otherkin that are not like who have my particular experiences. I'm sorry about that noise. That was a motorcycle that just went by, and I was in the middle of a sentence, so I couldn't cut that out of the video. But yeah, somebody has been driving by with I think a motorcycle, and that's what that noise was. So sorry that the mic picked that up for some reason. But yeah, just finding people to relate to is very difficult. Though I guess easier on the internet than trying to look in person. I don't think I would ever join an in-person otherkin like discussion group or meetup group or anything like that. I think that I would be so terrified. Just because I would still feel like an outcast even in a community that identifies with the same experiences that I do. I don't know. There's always that feeling of being some kind of weird outlier, or outcast rather is the word I'm looking for. And I guess like the definitive like underlying struggle is like, am I really otherkin? Like, would I still consider myself to be otherkin even if I did not have a dissociative disorder? That's also like a fear of mine, is that like maybe I'm faking, maybe I'm being a little too influenced by the experiences of my headmates, and that it's not really my experience. I think that's like that's another thing that I really need to like look into. But yeah, I would say that this is the strangest part of my identity and the hardest part to be so open about. I definitely plan on looking for communities that are like welcoming to otherkin. Dragonkin is such a common like kin type that it wouldn't be that difficult to find like other people who have the same experiences, especially like other people who have headmates that may identify with the otherkin label just because of that, because they have that influence from like other parts of their identity. Like I definitely want to like look around for communities like that. I think it would be helpful. Like I found a couple like system communities where like everyone in the community has a dissociative disorder of some sort, and those have been spaces where I could talk about things like that. But I would love to go farther and look for just communities that are more specific to my experiences. I guess the question of the month, which you can answer in the comments. I am not again, doing the question of the month over on my Discord server. But I will still be replying to every single comment that I get about the question of the month. So if you are otherkin, what does that mean for you, and what are your experiences? Comment down below, and I will be replying to everybody who comments on the video. And I guess that's it. That was a long running, it's not my longest identity talk video, but it still felt pretty lengthy. I feel like a lot of that was rambling and stumbling and just trying to figure out a way to talk about this kind of thing. So yeah, that's about it. So thank you for listening to me ramble about really weird things, which is basically what this entire channel is me rambling about weird things. And I am signing off for now. See you later.